Hi, host Eric here, host of Talking with Famous People, and tonight I'm going to be answering a question that was posed here in the chat of the Raw Room. If you'd like to join us here in the Raw Room, I'm always happy to answer any questions or take any requests regarding video making. Tonight, I think it's Elsie indicated that she would be interested in hearing more about the inferior function or the fourth function and how it manifests according to which function it is. I think it's a good topic. Let's talk about it. Foremost, if you're not particularly familiar with cognitive functions, the fourth function in the conscious stack is referred to as the inferior function in MBTI, anyway, and it is the opposite end of the axis of your dominant function. So for me as an ENTP, I've got extroverted intuition as my dominant function. That means I'm going to have introverted sensing as my inferior function. One thing to note about the inferior function that most people seem to agree with, regardless of which cognitive function there is in that slot for you, is that it is an area in which you're willing to accept and interested in accepting infinite help. And that's certainly the case with me with introverted sensing. Introverted sensing is, one way to think about it is, it's the way we keep track of stuff that's already been decided. Well, I know I've got to go to work because that's what I got to do. So, keeping track of your work schedule, introverted sensing. I made plans to go out with Judy on Thursday. It's already been decided. I got to keep track of it. Introverted sensing. I've got this knife here that I use sometimes for X, Y, or Z. Under certain contexts, I might want to have it with me. Keeping track of what I have like this and when I might want to use it, introverted sensing. Another kind of introverted sensing is the body comfort kind. Oh, I'm cold right now. Introverted sensing. It's stuff about the self that's already been decided or is definitive. You're not making any judgments with this perceiving function. You aren't determining whether or not you do need to go to work. That's not an introverted sensing thing. You're remembering that you have to go to work at this time. That's an introverted sensing thing. You're noticing that you're cold, that you're uncomfortable. That's an introverted sensing thing. You are attending to the fact that your immediate environment is messy and it's interfering with your efficiency. That's an introverted sensing thing too. So, having that as an inferior function means you're bad at dealing with shit that's already been decided. Why? Because your nature as an extroverted intuitor is somebody who's good at dealing with stuff that's yet to be decided, with new problems, with new ideas. So, let me read that. That seems like a good comment. I want to read it out loud. According to functions theory, the psyche is a self-balancing mechanism. When the inferior function erupts, it is sending you a message informing you that your psyche is out of balance because you are directing most of your mental energy to the dominant function. Okay, so what he means by when it erupts is when you go into like full blast SI mode for a week. Well, it's balancing you out because you're indulging too much in what's most fun, what's most comfortable, what's easiest. The thing about the psyche is, I like the notion of it being a self-balancing system, but ultimately what it is a set of tools that you can use in conjunction with each other to accomplish things you need to accomplish or want to accomplish in life. It's only self-balancing insofar as as overweighting one of those areas precludes you from attaining the things that you want and need to attain. I think it's a mistake to think that you're sort of inherently in need of X amount of SI in order to be whole or actualized or realized. I think it's better to think that there aren't very many good solutions to certain problems that don't involve incorporating some of that. If that's one of the four tools you have, you're going to be a bad life player if you don't use all the tools that are available to you, if you only have four conscious tools to use, really. That's a simplified explanation of this thing, but I think it sort of explains why you do need to have SI in the mix if you want to be effective. No matter how you define effective. I mean, it doesn't have to be like TE kind of effective. It's just meaning if you want to be less frustrated, you know. So it is curious to think about how different types manifest their inferior function in ways that are visible to us, others. I've seen my ex-wife manifest her inferior function TI I mean, it's easier to talk about how they manifest its absence or its underuse. The way that my ex-wife did that was she didn't understand that when she kept talking about my tone, she was saying, I don't like to evaluate this situation on logical consistency or on logic at all. I want to evaluate it on how you're making me feel. And so that's why we need to talk about tone instead of the actual content of your words. Because if she could resolve the issue of her feelings on the matter and resolve the FE issue, make sure that everyone feels okay, then it didn't matter to her if she was right or wrong anyway, or anything like that. None of that shit mattered as long as the feelings were adjudicated properly. For me, it was exactly the other way around. It didn't matter if it was sensitive or considerate or whatever other fucking words she used. It mattered if it mattered how it resolved, right? Is it X or Y? So TI in the fourth slot, I see it with Abraham as well. I mean, it's just there's certain things about which they just don't understand what it means to evaluate it logically at all. They're guilty of cake and eat it too a lot. That's one of the phenomena of people who have TI in the fourth slot. They'll say like, "Well, I want it this way," and then they'll be like, "And I want this other thing this way." But those two things are cake and eat it too, right? Like, well, I want like the classic is I want for me to not have to tell you and for you to know anyway, and I want also for it to be fine for me to tell you and for it not necessarily to be scoldy and like all kinds of contradictory shit, and you go, you can't have all that. It doesn't make any sense. You can't both leave because of undefined reasons and then say, and you should have to pay me money now too. Because I didn't ask you to leave. That would make sense if, you were counting on me to support you or something. Fine. And I was like, get out of here because I got this hot chick I want to bang. Okay, fine. Then maybe I have to pay you money. Like that obviously matters, but they want things that happened already not to count. So that's TI in the fourth. Other other things that are in the fourth that I feel comfortable describing pretty well are, well, if you've got SE in the fourth slot, that manifests as going through different cycles with your body. Like, well, now I'm into lifting weights and I got muscles. Oh shit, I'm done with that now. I stopped doing that. Now I'm riding my bike every day for a couple months maybe, and then, oh, I lost 40 pounds. Oh, I stopped doing that. Now I put 40 more pounds on. That's like SE in the fourth slot. It's dumb. I hate that shit. Exercise regimens, diets, lifting weights, all that kind of shit. I hate that fucking shit. SE fourth slot likes to dabble with that and thinks it's important for some reason. Um, FI fourth slot. It's like Chad. I mean Damon. It's there's a certain amount of intense disregard for feelings that the seventh slot FI person doesn't have. I don't. I think I'm less antagonistic towards introverted feelings than a fourth slot introverted feeler. Somebody who's got it in the inferior is going to be more antagonistic to it. I'm just kind of blind to it, but that's different than antagonistic to it. FE fourth slot. Well, your INTPs, what's weird about it is they don't come across as awkward at all. When you get to know them, what you realize is they are desperately concerned with FE and hate it because they don't get it, but they want it. Like I would love a nice ordered life with everything all set up and organized and shit. I'd fucking love that. So I want somebody else to do it for me though. INTPs, same thing with FE, but they never say that. They don't. They get FE so poorly they don't understand that it's okay for them to just be vulnerable about that. And as a consequence, they don't know what to make of it. they lambast FE as though it were the devil's work. But really what they want is to just be, please, will somebody else excuse me from this burden of dealing with other people's feelings, making sure that somebody else manage others' perceptions of me, and so that I can get what I need out of those and not have to be in charge of it myself, because that's a difficult thing for me to manage. That's what INTPs want. They don't even know they want it because they have a more thorny relationship with their fourth slot than I think most types do, because it's FE. The N's in the fourth. Well, if you have NE in the fourth, then you're like my mom. You're like Dave Porter. You're like Cameron. It's fine. It's a fine one to have in the fourth slot. I mean, it works out well. Hi, Courtney. If you've got any in the fourth slot, you really can farm out all your extroverted intuition needs to. You got a haircut or what? You got a perm? Is that what you're trying to tell me? You're wearing a wig? I don't know what you're trying to tell me about your hair. You've got golden locks. You guys could change hair and nobody would tell the difference. You guys could exchange scalps and nobody would notice. Anyway, we're talking inferior functions and I'm on to the ends. I think having any in your fourth slot is a lucky way to be. That's a good fourth function to have. It's easy to farm out possibilities to others. If you've got some friends who are any style adventurous like me, or an ENFP friend or something, you'll get all the NE you actually need in life. It's a good one to have in the 4th slot. I wouldn't want to have it in the 7th slot because then you've got no improvisational ability if you have it in the 7th slot. NI 4th slot. Well, I think if you have NI in the 4th slot, you're likely to believe your own bullshit and get some sort of complex. I think that's the risk of that. Like Trump, NI 4th slot. I mean, he kind of goes with whatever. It doesn't really matter to him whether the idea is better or worse. It's just an idea. I just go with it. Like cat anus there. It's kind of like a cat with his anus. That's Trump with his NI. He just kind of shoves it wherever and it doesn't matter. So that's NI in the 4th slot. I don't like NI 4th slot. I think that's a risky proposition. Any 4th slot's a safe proposition. SI 4th slot, at least I have technological assistance with it. You know, having SI in the 4th is kind of not so bad because we've got all these helper things like Google Calendar and shit like that, which I don't really use that much, but whatever. Any other thoughts on inferior functions, 4th slot functions from anybody? Follow-up questions or comments? Okay, well, thanks for being special people, those of you at home who have been enjoying this on your device, and those of you present in the room as well. Have a good evening, and don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.